Today's homily is for the fifth Sunday of Easter. As we move closer to Pentecost, 50 days after Easter, which we will celebrate on June 5th this year, we hear in our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles a growing acceptance of the Christian faith by the Gentiles. In the Jewish way of thinking, the world was divided between two types of peoples, the Jews and all the rest, known as the Gentiles. We see that this growth of faith among the Gentiles, the nations, took place gradually. After Jesus ascended to the Father, the faith that Jesus is Lord, that he rose from the dead, and as we heard in our second reading, that he makes all things new. This was first preached in Jerusalem to the Jews, and then moving outward to Samaria and Damascus, in Lebanon, and in Antioch, in modern-day Turkey, down to Alexandria in Egypt, over to the Greek Isles and the many places in the then-known world of the Mediterranean, up to Rome and beyond. In each case, we know of both Jewish as well as Gentile communities beginning to grow. Much of this is due to the missionary work of St. Paul and his companions, who through preaching the word and sharing the Eucharist founded Christian communities, people who first welcomed them into their homes and later into churches. We also see from the beginning of the church the role of leaders. First, apostles who received their authority from Christ, and then their successors, the bishops, and deacons who assisted the bishops, as we know from the Acts of the Apostles, in caring for the poor, but as preaching the word as well. And in the first reading today, we hear of the appointment of elders in these churches. Elder in Greek is presbyter, which in English became the word priest. So from apostolic times, we see the roles of bishop, priest, and deacons as leaders, that is, servants of these Christian communities. Of course, the Lord Jesus focused his mission on the people of Israel, and except for a few cases, his healing and preaching was directed to the Jews. But there were moments in the life of Jesus when Gentiles showed an interest in his message and the new life he offered. The three kings, or wise men, came from other countries of the Gentiles to travel to see the newborn king of the Jews. So even at his birth, we see representatives of the Gentiles present to worship him. In Mark 7:25, we hear of a Greek woman, a Syrophoenician, who came to Jesus because her daughter was possessed by an evil spirit. That was when Jesus said in reply, "It is not right to give the food of the children to the dogs." But she convinced him by her steadfast faith when she said, "Even the dogs eat the crumbs the children drop to the floor." And so Jesus cured the child. Likewise, a Roman centurion came to see Jesus to ask healing for his servant. It was to him that Jesus said that he had not encountered such faith among the people of Israel. And when Jesus died, it was a Roman soldier who professed faith in Jesus, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." So we can see that there was a searching for faith among the peoples known as the Gentiles who encountered Jesus. And now the preaching began after Pentecost by the Spirit-filled disciples, and there was an opening of the door of the faith to the Gentiles, as we heard in the last sentence of the first reading today from the Acts of the Apostles. The door of faith was opened to the Gentiles. Of course, all of us are counted among the Gentiles, for we are the children of the peoples who are not Jewish, but who came to believe through the preaching of missionaries and the witness they gave by their lives. And this was treasured in families and passed down parents to children. I think it's important to think how precious this faith is that was first received by the Gentiles in Jesus' day and which continues up to our day. There is an important aspect of living our faith, sharing our faith with others, and cherishing the gift of faith that we have received. Jesus makes it clear in the gospel today that we are known as his disciples to the measure with which we love one another. What greater love can a parent have for his or her child than to share the faith? And this sharing sometimes is expressed in words and, of course, in deeds. This brings us back to how important it is that parents show examples of faith to their children. Children are very perceptible, and in simple ways they can see when parents are sincere and truthful. Even ordinary Christians, if there is such a thing as ordinary, in everyday activities can make an impact in the lives of others, each in his own way. How thoughtful when someone offers his or her seat on a bus to an elderly person, or to offer to help someone when it is not so convenient, or the person is bothersome to you. We know that it is easy to catch a cold from another and how easily germs spread. COVID has reinforced that thinking. But it's also easy to catch the spirit of love in one who stops to help someone, and that spirit spreads from person to person. I once taught in a Catholic high school in Los Angeles back in the 1970s. It was a high school in a neighborhood called Watts in Los Angeles, and the students were very street smart and tough kids who sometimes got into fights, and many had to work hard not to get into gangs or into drugs. There was another school nearby in Compton, and the students there would say to our students, when the two schools played basketball in tournaments, if you beat us on the basketball court, we will beat you in the parking lot. So they lived in a tough world. This part of the story happened before I got there, but there was a very old priest, Father Alex Heffler, who every day would walk the hallways of the school praying his prayer book. And many of the students thought he was very old-fashioned. He was quite elderly and very strict in the faith. He taught all the first-year students, and I taught all the second-year students. I met him before I became a priest. In fact, I can remember one day a student saying to me, "Well, what do you know? Father Alex is a priest." Before I got there, there was one student among many who graduated and were drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War in the 1960s. And during a battle, his platoon was ambushed and many were shot. He also was shot, and blood began to flow from his wound. In a moment, his life passed in front of his eyes, and he thought he was going to die. And just as he was thinking he was about to die, he had a vision of old Father Alex praying his prayer book and walking in the hallway of his old school. And he knew then that he would not die on the battlefield. The young soldier came back home after the war, and after he recovered and gained his strength, he came to the school to share his story. And the image of the old priest praying gave him hope that somehow he would not die, that he would be able to survive the wound, because he thought for sure he would die. He realized someone was praying for him. We never know the impact of simple gestures and the moment of living our faith, and how even a simple act like someone praying can have an impact in the world, in the life of another person searching for God. The Gentiles in the first reading would not have come to the faith without such simple acts of faith that they saw, felt, and witnessed in the lives of the disciples of Jesus. So as Jesus said, if you are his disciples, people will be able to see it in your lives. For example, how you love one another. Let us, who want to be known as followers of Jesus, not be afraid to live our faith and to share our faith with others in a world hungry for Christ.